Breaking. Major agreements between Zelensky and Macron. Joint production of advanced weapons that could change the course of the front. At the same time, Ukraine is pushing forward with its own developments. Fedorov made a stunning statement. Artificial intelligence may now play a key role in drone warfare. Meanwhile, more than 10 countries are already asking Ukraine for help defending against Shahed drones. The expertise of Ukrainian specialists is becoming a shield for the world. Shock. An uninvited Hungarian delegation has become increasingly brazen. Orban's hysterical move has backfired. Tensions are rising. The world is holding its breath. Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafonova here with the latest updates. Zelensky revealed details of his meeting with Macron. On Friday, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky met with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron while in Paris. The two leaders discussed a number of pressing issues. The Ukrainian president shared the details on his Telegram channel.
I am grateful for all of France's support for Ukraine and for Emmanuel's personal support. Today, we primarily discussed security. Our security, the security of Ukraine and Europe, as well as global security in light of events in the Middle East and the Gulf region. Of course, today and always we maintain close coordination with Emmanuel on issues related to Ukraine's protection and defense.
Zelensky noted that Ukraine and France are paying significant attention to joint defense production. During the meeting with Macron, they discussed bilateral projects as well as the SAFE program.
We identified steps and concrete decisions that can deliver strong results. This concerns both air defense and combat aviation.
The Ukrainian president emphasized that it is important to continue increasing pressure on Russia over the war in order to achieve real security and lasting peace.
The determination of the European Union and the determination of other partners around the world must remain strong. It must work in a way that leaves Russia with no additional illusions. Russia must end this war. And I am grateful to everyone who helps us achieve this.
Ukraine will train AI models for drones using real battlefield data. The country is launching a new format of cooperation between the government, private companies, and international partners. The Ukrainian government has adopted a resolution allowing real frontline data to be used to train artificial intelligence models. According to Mikhailo Fedorov, in modern warfare, Russia must be defeated in every technological cycle. One of the key areas of this competition is artificial intelligence. The minister also emphasized that the future of warfare belongs to autonomous systems.
Our task is to increase the level of autonomy of drones and other combat systems so they can detect targets faster, analyze situations, and help make decisions on the battlefield. The key to this is high-quality data for training neural networks.
For this purpose, a special AI platform has been created at the Ministry of Defense Center for Innovation and Defense Technology Development. It will allow developers to safely train models without direct access to sensitive databases, work with large volumes of labeled photo and video materials, and use constantly updated datasets. According to Fedorov, Ukraine currently possesses a unique collection of battlefield data, including millions of annotated frames gathered during tens of thousands of combat drone flights. This data is already being used to train neutral networks that automatically detect ground and aerial targets in the Delta system. The Ministry of Defense noted that both international partners and Ukrainian companies have a strong demand for such data to advance and modernize defense technologies.
For us, this is the next step in developing a win-win partnership. Our partners gain the opportunity to train their AI models using real data from modern warfare, while Ukraine gains faster development of autonomous systems and new technological solutions for the front.
Orban gave instructions to the Hungarian delegation in Kyiv, tried several times a day to arrange a meeting with Ukrainians. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban posted a video on Facebook of a call with Hungary's Deputy Minister of Energy Gabor Czapek, who arrived in Ukraine without an invitation, allegedly to inspect the Druzhba pipeline damaged by Russia. Orban said it was absurd that Hungarians were in Kyiv and could negotiate with everyone except the Ukrainians. The world has never seen anything like this, Orban said, instructing his team to reach out again and again at least once or twice a day. Cepek recorded several videos from Kyiv. According to Hungarian media reports, he said he had met with diplomats in the Ukrainian capital, including the Slovak ambassador, and held some negotiations on energy issues. However, it appears he never actually met with Ukrainian officials. In his latest video recorded near the Hungarian embassy, he said he was waiting for a response from Kyiv. His visit is expected to continue on Friday. Ukraine's foreign ministry said the Hungarian visit to Kyiv had not been agreed upon and described them simply as tourists. Ukraine has received more than 10 requests from countries around the world seeking assistance in countering Iranian Shahed drones. The reason is clear: Ukrainian forces now possess the most extensive experience and expertise in dealing with these attacks. President Volodymyr Zelensky announced this during a joint press conference with French President Emmanuel Macron. Zelensky explained that constant large-scale drone strikes have forced Ukrainian defenders to develop unique skills in fighting such UAVs. This includes the creation of interceptor drones, new technological solutions, and the development of a comprehensive defense system against loitering munitions. According to the president, effective protection from these threats requires more than just interceptor systems. It also depends on practical combat experience, coordinated radar operations, and the proper functioning of the entire air defense network. Zelensky added that Ukraine is ready to share this knowledge with partner countries that support Kyiv in the war. Discussions about joint defense against drone attacks are expected to continue with international leaders as modern conflicts reveal new security challenges and highlights the need for close cooperation among allies. Counterattacks by the armed forces of Ukraine in the south are disrupting Russia's plans for spring-summer offensive operations in this part of Ukraine and in the Donetsk region, despite Putin's claims of success. More details about what is happening along the line of contact are coming up in our military overview.
A fire broke out after a drone attack on the Tikhoretsk Neft oil transshipment terminal in the Krasnodar region. According to local residents, several explosions were heard near the city at night, after which a large fire broke out on the territory of the oil depot.
It is worth noting the systematic work of the Ukrainian defense forces in reducing the capabilities, primarily the logistical needs, of the occupying army. That is, systematic work is underway to hollow out the oil pumping stations and key storage facilities of the Russian Federation's oil refining complex, which reduces the ability to finance the active military operation of the Russian Federation in Ukraine.
They funded it in a modern way, but in fact it's like in the 1940s. This is how ZWAR correspondents characterize the quality of the Russian army's communications at the front.
Well, they stole another few billion there, yeah. Unfortunately, communication right now on the front line is provided by field telephones, wired communication models from almost the time of the Great Patriotic War.
Tell me, what is a tap?
A tap is like a
telephone set?
A telephone set. Basically, well, they were manufactured in the 1940s of the last century. These field phones, it's when a signalman walks along the front line with a reel, right, and lays it from one dugout, from one strong point to another.
After Starlink was disconnected, the Russians have serious problems with situational awareness and accordingly horizontal communications. It should be noted that the Russian side admits the fact that the so-called import substitution, primarily providing Russian army units with modern communication equipment, has completely failed.
In these frames, the Serebryansky forest and our warriors who are exterminating the occupiers there.
At the moment, the main efforts of the occupiers are aimed precisely at eliminating the Ukrainian bridgehead in the Siversk and Donetsk area. Problems arose after the capture of Siversk and the establishment of control by the occupiers over the dominant heights. But despite this, Ukrainian units are conducting successful counterattacks to prevent the possibility of further advancement of the occupiers deep into Ukrainian territory.
In the Oleksandrivka direction, the armed forces of Ukraine deoccupied about 430 square kilometers of territory, thereby thwarting Putin's plans to use the Dnipropetrovsk region as a bargaining chip in exchange for the Ukrainian-controlled territories of Donbass.
For comparison, this is an area comparable to the area of most of Kyiv. It should be noted that, according to various estimates, about 9 settlements have been deoccupied. Not just 2 settlements remain under the full control of the occupiers.
This is the result of the strike on the Kremny EL plant with Storm Shadow missiles. It is visible to the naked eye that a complete reconstruction is unavoidable, which confirms the decommissioning of the facility.
Russians are in panic. Ukrainian weapons are tearing apart military facilities deep in the enemy's rear. Most importantly, when using its own missiles, Kyiv does not need permission from Washington, Paris, or London. More about the newest developments by Ukrainian weapons engineers and their valuable trophies coming up next.
The Russian city of Tula, nearly 500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, a coking plant is on fire.
And what do we have here?
Locals in chat groups are debating whether it was a Ukrainian drone strike or a technical failure. But the metallurgical plant supplies metal and ferroalloys to the Russian Federation's defense factories. And this is a confirmed strike by the armed forces of Ukraine on an oil depot in the Krasnodar region.
Anyway, well, there it is, you know. There's the oil depot, the oil is burning.
After the strike, fires broke out at 3 different locations within the oil depot. The Tikhoretsk oil hub is one of the largest oil transshipment points in southern Russia. Earlier, Gazprom reported that on March 10th and 11th, compressor stations were attacked, specifically Ruskaya, Beregovaya, and Kazakia, which supply the Turkstream and Blue Stream pipelines.
Gas transportation to Turkey through one or both of these streams will be halted as a result. And this is overall a serious blow to to revenues from Russian gas, which are already declining.
A day earlier, the armed forces of Ukraine launched perhaps their largest strike in recent times. They used Storm Shadow missiles to hit the Kremny L plant in Bryansk.
Oh my goodness.
Kremny L produces components for Pantsir and Iskander missiles. According to the armed forces of Ukraine, at least 5 missiles hit the plant itself. This was a unique attack on the Russian defense industry as the strikes were adjusted virtually in real time.
This is the first known case where a strike on a strategic Russian defense enterprise was adjusted in real time using a UAV.
High-ranking officials are therefore asking the fundamental question, where is the Russian air defense? Where is our air defense? Firstly, air defense systems have been sent and deployed in order to provide protection for Moscow, the Valdai residents, as well as the city of St. Petersburg. These are currently considered to be the primary and most important sites that are being protected by Russian forces at this time. Russian air defense systems, and naturally they are at the front. For the rest of vast Russia, there simply isn't enough air defense.
Ukrainian missile and drone attacks are becoming increasingly frequent and effective. Besides Russia's lack of air defense to cover all strategic sites, Ukraine has significantly increased its own drone production. The main focus is on deep strikes, so-called attacks deep into the aggressor's territory. The FP-1 and FP-2 drones are actively involved in this, undergoing constant modernization virtually in real time. Already the FP-2 can strike at 200 kilometers and the FP-1 up to 1,000 kilometers.
Will make it so that the FP-1 will carry for 1,000 kilometers. We moved the tank to the wing and now it carries 105 kilograms for 1,000 kilometers. And now we're codifying it and we'll be installing the wing tank. This wing tank will allow for increased capacity in the FP-2, so there will be a reserve of up to 158 kilograms of ammunition.
Currently, the Firepoint company produces 200 FP-1 and FP-2 UAVs per day, and this number will grow. As the trend of recent months in missile and drone attacks shows, Ukraine has seized the initiative from the aggressor. And since most of these weapons are Ukrainian-made, Kyiv doesn't need to ask for permission. So deep strikes on the Russian military-industrial complex will only increase.
Ukraine is preparing to assist its neighbors who are currently under Russian occupation. President Volodymyr Zelensky hinted at the possibility of operations aimed at destroying towers used to guide Shahed drones on the territory of Belarus. At the same time, there are reports of active efforts related to the situation in Transnistria. Here are the details.
Ukraine is trying to help its neighbors who are under Russian influence. Rumors are increasingly surfacing that Ukrainian troops could assist Moldova in deoccupying Transnistria.
They keep their military grouping there. Everything is fine for them there. This could be more of a threat to us, and we can resolve this issue if we set our minds to it. Resolve it radically. But is it necessary to do so? This is where these geopolitical questions begin.
An enclave whose task is both the destabilization of the Republic of Moldova itself and the destabilization of Ukraine. It is already clear that if Russia fails to achieve a decisive victory in the war of attrition against Ukraine, Transnistria's days will be numbered. the self-proclaimed republic will cease to exist and will become an ordinary region of Moldova. And the Russian forces that are on foreign soil will be expelled from Moldova, just as they were expelled from other countries where they tried to plant their bloody roots.
And although Putin publicly speaks about Moldova with deliberate contempt, Russians are constantly trying to interfere in the country's politics and elections to install their candidates and gain full access to temporarily occupied Transnistria.
Moldova is one of the poorest countries in Europe. Quite recently, it was the poorest country in Europe. Now, Ukraine has taken on this distinguished place of honor. For us, the presence of this country within the Commonwealth of Independent States, or CIS, holds no particular value.
They need there to be, how should I put it, a demand here in Moldova, a political demand for a government that can come to an agreement with the Kremlin. What is this for? This is so that the government would essentially turn a blind eye to the ongoing strengthening of the military presence in the Transnistrian region. Because if you turn a blind eye here, in 3 to 4 weeks, there will be 10,000 soldiers armed to the teeth. And then you can imagine what kind of tension that would create in the region. And not only in the southwest of Ukraine, but also in the southeastern region of Romania.
Another country whose elections the Russians are already interfering in, Hungary. Russian political strategists are trying to promote the current Prime Minister Orban for re-election and are building the country's election campaign and policy on hatred towards Ukraine.
We do not want the Ukrainians to drag us into their war. We do not want Hungarians to go and die for Ukraine. We do not want our farmers to go bankrupt. We do not want Europe to turn into their mafia nest. We don't want Hungarian money to be sent to Ukraine. Ukraine is pursuing a very blatant anti-Hungarian policy, and the Ukrainians expect Brussels and their Hungarian proxies to put enough pressure on Hungary to take a position that serves Ukraine's interests. Hungary provides 30 to 40% of Ukraine's electricity imports, and in this sector, the Hungarian government can create difficulties for Ukraine. The Ukrainians had better remember this when they're at various planning tables deciding whether or not to bomb the Druzhba oil pipeline. So let that be on their minds.
President Zelensky has already threatened Orban to stop his sabotage because it's costing Ukrainian lives. Orban in turn made up a fake story about threats to his family.
It's just that the Russians are killing us, and we're supposed to give oil to Orban because, poor thing, he can't win the election without it. We hope that this individual in the European Union won't block the 90 billion, or the first tranche of the 90 billion. And Ukrainian soldiers will have weapons, otherwise we'll give this person's address to our armed forces, to our boys. Let them call him and speak to him in their own language.
The Ukrainians are already threatening my family, my children, and my grandchildren. Everyone is fine, but there's a limit to everything. At a time like this, my family gathers together. I ask them to take it seriously, but not to be afraid. Even though this isn't normal for our everyday lives, we'll figure out how to adapt to this. As we can see, Orban isn't particularly bothered by this. He's not bothered, if only because in an election campaign any means will do, including declaring a neighboring country an enemy based solely on the fact that it doesn't want to allow the financing of a war against itself. One can hope, of course, that once the election campaign is over, the Hungarian Prime Minister will be much more cautious in his statements and will no longer demand that Ukraine agree with all his political visions for the future, including his views on ties with Moscow.
After the deployment of the Oreshnik on Belarusian territory and assistance in coordinating Shahed strikes on Ukraine, President Zelensky also threatened the self-proclaimed Lukashenko with consequences for being dragged into the war.
It's really just Lukashenko's fantasy, his belief that he'll actually be helped if he continues to get dragged into this war. Moreover, we're not in the first year of the war, and it's already a technological war. We don't use our drones against Belarus
because we're not at war with them. I emphasize that once again.
We're not in the first year of war, and we don't need to worry about manpower and our troops. We can manage many things right from the territory of Kyiv. So he needs to come to his senses, as they say, sober up and not get dragged into the war.
And after the president of Ukraine imposed sanctions against Lukashenko and met with the Belarusian opposition, the dictator almost became hysterical.
How can we push some garbage, through journalists or whoever, to the people that everything you see would be fine? But these sanctions, Ukraine is in our way. Well, if anyone buys that, it's unlikely to be the Belarusians anymore. Belarusians are pragmatic people. You feed me first, and then you can tell me whatever. Clothe me?
But if we understand that the Belarusians themselves are not at all supporters of the political choice that Lukashenko made for them by usurping power, then indeed pressure on both Moscow and Minsk can lead sooner or later to a regime change, or at least to the point where Putin will not be able or willing to provide Lukashenko with assistance in the event of new protest movements in Belarus. Well, in the end, Putin has already failed to help either Bashar al-Assad or Nicolas Maduro.
Russia is weakening every day, and this is felt primarily by those countries where Russian troops or Kremlin money have managed to infiltrate. And perhaps very soon the peoples of these countries will be able to reclaim what is rightfully theirs.
That's all for now. Stay with us to be the first to know what's happening right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon!